Thank you, Tim. Good afternoon, everyone. So we're going to talk about basic report writing today and some tips and tricks that I've kind of learned over the years. I'm going to pull up Sage here. So the very first thing that we have to know is the difference between a report and a form. So most of us, I know some of you guys have been longtime users, I looked at our attendee list, most of us think of forms as things like invoices and purchase orders and possibly a change order. But we don't think of forms in the terms of report writing. But all reports have a form component to it. So I'll even open, I'm going to open the general ledger report, and the items on the left with the numbers are the report. Under the form is actually the report form. The report forms go across all the modules and all the reports. So be careful if you do something specific in a form that's for a report, make sure that you give it a different name and maybe drop it to the bottom of the list. They pull up in alphabetical order so that it doesn't pull up with something that's another report that has nothing to do with it. So this is the form, and the white page is the form, and the gray area is the report. And that's the area that we're going to talk about today, the detailed area. The next thing that we should talk about is where to start. So I have lots of questions. Customers will ask me, I started a report and I just can't find the fields I need. It just doesn't seem like I'm starting in the right spot. So intuitively, most people would think the best place to start on a report would be under Review and Reporting and in Menu 3, the Report Writer. It does give you a very great little wizard, but the problem with starting from here is that you're starting with the report from scratch. You're not getting all the stuff that already exists, all the alignment. You're not making sure that you're starting with the right primary table, and starting with the correct primary table is the key to finding the tables that you need. So even for someone like me who's been writing reports for 16 years, I never start in the wizard. I always start in a report that already exists that is closer to what I'm looking for. And then from there I modify it. So today, as an example, we're going to do a job log, something that I get asked for quite often. And I'm going to show you our end result first of where we're going, and then we'll talk about how to get there. So the end result is this job log report number 8. And this is where we're going to wind up, or close to it, at the end of the day. And this happens to be a list of all jobs with their customers, their supervisors or salespeople, their statuses, and their contract amounts, which is not, this is their current contract amount. That's not a field in Sage. That's a calculation. So I'm going to show you how to pull that. And as well as the next 4 fields are actually calculations. They are not fields or database fields in the software. So I want you to see how you can pull them in and some of the fields that Sage has provided so that you don't have to write the calculations from scratch. So when I started with the report that we're looking at on the screen, I actually started with report 21. So everything from 21 down is a system report. Now I need a report that's landscaped, and I need a report that's legal. I need lots of room. So normally I would start with a landscaped report. However, in this menu, if you look, there's no landscaped report. It would say land. So the first thing we're going to do is open the report, and we're going to talk about how to change the size of the report. So I'm going to click on Modify. And right now it's an 8.5 by 11 in portrait. I want it to be legal. So on the report form at the top, the description after the dot is what we're changing. So a legal report is legal _ land. That's going to give me a legal report. So I'm also going to change the name, and I'm going to save it. So right now it still looks like it's portrait, and it's on an 8.5 by 11, and we're going to see once we save it and open it back up that it's in a legal format. So anything below number 21 is the number you want to give it. You want to keep the number. That's the menu number the report will pull up in. Something else is difficult to do in the wizard. I'm just going to backspace over the last two numbers and put in the number I want to save it as. On the bottom, the only reason why I have Save as Private available is because I'm on a standalone. For all of you guys running networks, you want to be on the top bullet so you can share that report with other users. I'm going to click Save, and I'm going to close it. When I now go to open up number 9 and click on Modify, we now have a legal landscape report. So that's how you change it. To talk a little bit about what each of these sections are of this report writer, we have a menu bar at the top. So we have options to align and calculated fields, notes, different types of modes that we'd be in, text or writing lines. But all the items on these menus also exist in the toolbar to the right. They're all shortcuts. So most people, including myself, use the toolbars. There's mouse overs for everything, so they're easy to find. And 90% of the time I would exist on the toolbar on the right. And then we also have the Documents window, which is where we do all of our work. This is the white section. And then you have the mode that you're in. So at the bottom left-hand corner, you can see right now it says Edit Text. So it's very hard to see, especially in a GoToMeeting window. But if you click on a different mode, like write a line or draw a box, it's going to change the mode at the bottom. The reason why I'm bringing this up is on a very regular basis, I get a call from a client that says, I have a random line in the middle of a report or a form. It's because they accidentally got in a different mode than adding a field, like drawing a line, and they click somewhere and all of a sudden they get a line and they didn't even realize they did it. So it's important when you're doing this that you look at the bottom and realize the mode that you're in. 90% of the time we're going to be in adding text. You also have band lines on the left, and the band lines are headers. So we can have as many header lines as we want. We have the ability to group in 3 groups. If you need to go to 4 groups or 5 groups, we have to use something other than the Sage Report Writer. Detail, which is what we're dealing with today. And then let me get this back to a header. And then we have, for each group, we have a subtotal field, a grand total, and a no print. So many times we need a no print line to pull in information for the report to work, but it's not something we want to print physically. So in this case, we want the customer name, but we really don't care about the customer number. However, Sage runs by number, so we need the customer number somewhere. So it winds up on a no print line so that the system can then link things appropriately. So if I just wanted to add a field, so one of the other things that was on that report was the contract date. So I'm going to click into a spot that I want it, and then I'm going to click on my shortcut to the right, which is Insert Fields from a List. Make sure you guys can see that little mouse over. There you go. And then we get all the linked tables. So this is everything that's currently linked in the software for the job table. And I can see things like invoices, and I can see everything in the job screen. So the initial contract amount, can't see the current contract amount. It's not a field, and it's not available here. I can't see, I can see each individual invoice, but not a total. So we're a little limited on what we can add. But for now, I'm going to show you how you can add them, but just not through this drop down. So for now, I'm going to add at least the contract date. That was one of the things that we had on our report. I'm going to delete the client phone number and just clicking and then holding down my control button so you can, that's how you select multiple items, and then delete on my keyboard. The way that you get the other fields that I had on that original report is through calculated fields. So in this menu, there are 2 calculated fields that came in with the report, which is the job phone number and the customer phone number. But I need more than that. So if you select global calculations, there are tons of calculations that Sage has provided for you to pre-pick so that you don't have to write them. So I want to show you some of the things that we would grab in the report that I just did. So I want the new contract amount. That's the contract as of today with change orders. So I want that. So I'm going to double click it. it pulls in this entire calculation formula. You don't have to type it. And you're going to click Save, and then I'm going to pick the next one. So select Global, and the next thing I want is Invoice to Date. So you have two. One is Invoiced on Contract, and one is Invoiced to Date. The difference is if you're using AR invoices and using a memo invoice, then you would only want Invoiced on Contract. If you're not using the memo invoice function, then you can use that bottom one. I'm going to save it. And then the other one I want to grab is my current balance, which is what they owe us as of today, which is right here. And I'm going to click the drop down once more just so you guys can see all the fields that are out here. So there's fields for service, there's fields for accounts payable, accounts receivable, for jobs. There's some company-related fields. There's a bunch of fields in relationship to employees, and we're going to talk about this at the end and some of the examples of reports that we can do. But most people don't necessarily realize that all of these calculations are out here and available for you guys to use. So now that I've saved them into my calculation list, and they're all here, I can now go back to my document window and add the field. So I'm going to click into a field, same button at the top right-hand corner, which is Insert Fields. And now they're at the bottom. So I can add New Contract. I can add Invoice to Date. Now, calculated fields, because they're a calculated field and not an individual database field in the software, do not come over with properties because it doesn't know what to do with them. So you're going to want to left-click to select the calculation, right-click, select Properties, and now you're going to change the format. So how many decimal places do I want, dollar signs, commas, and then how I want to align it. So I'm going to align right, and I'm going to change the character count because I don't need it that long and I need some space. And I'm going to move it over. You have to do this one at a time. I'm going to do this one as well. And we'll add another field, just so you know how to add these fields. So same thing, insert field from a list, and we're going to insert the current balance, which is what they owe us today. And now we have those fields in our report. However, they're a little off. They're a little not they're out of alignment. So the way to align things is to select the first one, hold the control button down, and then select by your left mouse click each of the ones that we want to align. The last one that you select is the one it's going to align to. So I'm going to right click my mouse and align tops. That's going to make everything in balance. The next thing I need to do is try to make these lines work. So I'm going to extend this line. You guys are going to see a little, I don't want to call it a glitch, but a little funky thing that Sage does in the report writer. So I'm just extending a line. I'm in the add text mode. You can see that at the bottom left-hand corner. I'm extending a line. And sometimes when you extend it, and of course it didn't do it in this class, it did it in the last class, it actually created a box. And it did in that one. Do you see how it created an extra line? So if that happens to you, just click Edit, Undo, and it leaves the line without the box. And that's just a Sage report writer thing that's a little odd. To make the lines equal, I certainly could drag the top line and eyeball, making them equal, but I don't want to do that. So I'm going to select the line, right-click, Properties, look at the width, it's 1180, and then I'm going to do the same thing for the top. Select the line, right-click, and I'm going to change the width. And now I have lines that are in balance, and I don't have to worry about trying to manually line them up. The other thing we need on this is headers. So I want to put in what each of these are. So contract signed, current contract, invoice date. Try to get these in here as quickly as possible. Invoice to date, and current balance. Now these are all alignment 2, and they should be bold. That's one thing you can change all at once. So left click, control button, hold it down, and then left click on each one of these. The last one you select, you can right click and align tops, and then you can select them again and change the font all at once. So right-click, properties. So these are the things you can change on multiple fields together. So we just want bold. And now they look a little bit better. The other thing is maybe I need some filter criteria. Right now, this report standard came with, I think, a job, a customer, and the job status. Maybe I want more than that. To add that is the edit feature and then selection criteria. So the selection criteria now allows me to add additional criteria to the report. So maybe I want to pull anything with contract dates over or greater than a certain date. Maybe I don't necessarily change my job statuses to complete or closed right away, but I need to know once construction's done if they owe us money, so we're putting in completion dates. I'll get back to that. Should be right here. Project completed. So now I can maybe just run things to have completion dates within a specific time frame. That adds to my selection criteria. The last thing I want to do is maybe how I want to sort this. So most stage reports, not all, but a good chunk of them sort by number. Maybe I don't want to sort by the number. Maybe I want to sort by the client name. Maybe I want to sort by the job name. So under Edit and under Grouping, you guys can see this. Right now the job field has a little number 1 on it. It means it's sorting by the job number. If I wanted to sort by the job name, I would select that one instead, just a left click. Or maybe I want an order of the customer name, and a left click onto the customer name. So now we're sorting in alphabetical order by customer. I'm going to click OK, and we're going to go ahead and save it. I'm going to save it over the original one. Make sure that you save often. The report writers can be a little glitchy. So you want to make sure that you save often. In many cases, you might want to save even with different report numbers so that if something happens in the report while you're in it, you still have all those changes you made the last time you saved it. Now we're going to look at it. And now we have the start of our job log and an alphabetical order by customer. Okay. So what I'd like to do is show you guys, before we open things up for questions, I want to show you some different things and some different examples of reports that we can do with some of the things that we've just talked about. So this is another job log, a very extensive job log that a client asked for. I'm just going to pull it up quickly, but just to give you an idea of the things that can go on to these reports. Oops, well, that was not the right one. Let's try that again. So there we go, it's number 7. This one happens to have lots of information. So it has project managers, engineers, their products they're using, all kinds of dates involved in there, and calculations of how much was billed, how much they've spent, the size of the project. So that gives you some ideas of what we can do in a job log. And then you can do this everywhere. So in purchase orders, and then here we have the ability to do some other things. So this happens to be a warranty report for a client that wanted to be able to give to their customer all the vendors that were on their job and their contact information, so it was easy for them to find and call those people if there was a warranty issue. Another example of a good report that can be done all from within Sage and all from using Sage Global Calculations. The next report I'd like to show you is something that I also get asked for a lot, and that is if you're doing subcontracts and you're asking your PMs to approve subcontract invoices, well, if you're doing a schedule of values in the subcontract screen, accounting needs to know not just the subcontract that an invoice applies to, but the line item it applies to as well. So this is a good example of a report that shows every subcontract in the line number of that subcontract, the cost code it goes to, the original amount of the contract or that line, any change orders that are applicable to that line, the current contract, what was invoiced against the line, and what's remaining. A very common report that a lot of people use for PMs to approve invoices so they can get a little bit more information before they actually start approving invoices. Now, the other report that I have in the same menu is going to be the second one. This is a subcontract log, so this is something else that sometimes we like to send to the field. This actually has some linkage to AP and certifications as far as their certificates, where they're at, what's expired, and what has not, what's current. So maybe the PMs need to know if they have insurance, their vendors have insurance that has expired, along with their contract amounts, their license numbers, expiration dates. So that's another example of something we can do inside the software. And then this is a similar one, a project directory. This is everybody that's on the job. So another good example of a customer who wanted contact information to hand out for every sub that was on the job. Now another report, and I'm going to open up Report Writer again to show you this, that I get asked for all the time is for people who are doing payroll, they don't want, the check register is okay, but they also want to be able to see, hey, I need to see how much per person without having to add it up, how much we deducted in 401k and what we contributed, that type of thing. So this is a good example of that report. We're not going to see numbers here because it's a sample company, but at least you get an idea of the ability to add in payroll calcs into a check register. And that is actually a calculated field, so I want to show that to you real quick. It is a Sage calculated field. My mouse left, edit, calculated field. So a Sage global calculation at the very end is all these time card payroll calcs. This is pulling the in this case calculation 11 for a payroll record, how much for that payroll record, and then you would do it per employee. So all this is available to you. It's already out here. It's not something that I added on my own. It's part of the software. It's a very common report that we get asked for. Then I want to show you one more, and then we're going to open it up to some questions. And this is a job cost totals report. So a lot of people like this report. It's got a lot of information on it. However, they would like just a kind of a roll-up of, okay, you're giving me all the costs, but I'd like to see what was invoiced on the report. So let's look at report 07. You guys are kind of seeing all the custom stuff I have out here. I'm going to delete these dates because we're in the sample company, and the sample company's dates are really old. Oops. We don't want to modify it. We want to view it. And give me a second. I left the dates in. So this is going to show us not only by cost type, but also showing us, and this all got pulled in from Sage Global Calculations, original contract, current contract, original budget. So there's calculations for budgets as well, and current budget, invoice to date, and then all the cost types. And then the last one also is a job cost totals report, but it shows a breakout for fringe. So this is something a little bit different, but something I do get asked for. So in all of our standard Sage reports, the labor includes the fringe, but some people need that breakout. So this has that, as well as what was invoiced to date. So it's breaking out the gross labor from the burden or the fringe that was added. So that just gives you some ideas of some of the things you can do with the report writer that we can help you do. If you guys have questions on other types of reports that might be possible, or if you're interested in getting some of these reports for your company, or another thing that we had a lot of questions on is what do we do? We talked about how to modify a report. What do we do if there isn't a modify button? So in that case, if there's not a modify button, the only way to write it, even as myself as a consultant, is then to go to a separate software for report writing. So we usually use either Liberty Reports or Crystal Reports or Sage Intelligence. Those are the three that are very common to write reports with Sage 100 Contractor. So I'm going to open it up for questions. You guys can either raise your hand in the GoToMeeting toolbar, or you can type in a question if you'd like. We got a few more minutes left before we're done. I'm just going to scroll down and make sure no one has any questions. Justin has a question. I'm going to try to unmute you, Justin, and if not, we can. This is a really good question. So I think this is a great question, Justin. I actually was thinking about including this today. So he asked, is there any sort of simple map or table that shows what all these fields are? And the answer is yes, and it's in a hidden spot. So where this is at is in menu 13, and then menu 7 is a database format. So this is what it looks like. The problem with this is that it doesn't mean just because it's here that the table is tied or that you can tie it. Some cases you can, some cases you can't. But this is where you get it. And it will tell you the linking table. So this is accounts payable invoices, and it links which fields link to other things. So the purchase order number links to the purchase order table. It's kind of giving you a linkage. You can kind of see what other tables possibly would tie to that table. Anybody else with questions? I'm just looking down the list. Tanya has a question. I'm going to try to unmute you. Sometimes this works in GoToMeeting, sometimes it does not. If it doesn't work, if you don't mind just writing the question in the question chat box. Go ahead, Taya. It looks like maybe your mic is not working, so if you don't mind typing it in the question box, then I can answer your question. And it looks like anybody else with questions? Justin, we got yours. And then Taya, it doesn't look like your mic is working, so if you want to try to type in the box, or if you prefer to email me afterward, that's fine too. Tim, do you see anybody else before we wrap it up for today?
No, I do not.
Yep, one just popped in. Steve just popped in with a question. How can I add more spaces to my menu input like 3.5? A good question, not really a report writing question, but it's a question that I'm sure many people here have asked. It's a question I hear all the time. You can add it on a form by extending the length of a field, but as far as the actual entry, you cannot change it. The fields are limited, but in a form, so I'm in the job record, if you needed to extend the space, right-click, let's get into the properties, and the characters here tell you the amount of space it's going to take up on the report, so you can extend that. On the report itself, you can extend the characters, but on a entry screen, unfortunately, you are stuck with whatever Sage has provided us. Anybody else? So for anybody else who think of questions right after you hang up the phone, which is what happens to everybody, feel free to email or call the office. And if you're interested in maybe doing reports that don't have a modify button, then let us know. Or if you have questions on how to do some of these and you want some help, we're here to help you.
All right, great. Thank you very much, Kristine. Thank you, everybody, for joining. We had some great questions. And with that, we will go ahead and call it a day. So thanks again, and everybody enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, Tim.